Dang. So definitely really good for your heart. A
Hmm.
lot of benefits. It'll improve your chances of not having a heart attack and dying for those that are worried about that, which should be, I guess,
Everyone.
all of us.
Welcome to the Complete Nutrition Podcast.
The podcast where we break free from the dieting cycle and explore sustainable, realistic ways to improve your health.
I'm Kylie, a registered dietitian with over 10 years of experience.
And I'm Spencer, and I've been eating food my entire life. And I happen to be a nurse.
Each week, we dive into the science, psychology, and strategies behind mindful eating and sustainable change.
Whether you're here to transform your relationship with food, learn how to make lasting lifestyle changes, or are simply curious about what true health looks like, you're in the right place.
We'd invite you to subscribe and tag along if you'd like to stop dieting and start living. This episode is brought to you by the mineral selenium. It was discovered in the 1800s and it was named after the Greek goddess of the moon, Selene, which, fun fact, Spencer is a pretty big Greek mythology nerd. Did you know that that was the name of the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's her story?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm not that big of a nerd, I guess.
And it was brought to significance because it was found to be toxic in the 1800s in industrial workers. So I guess and I don't totally understand this piece of it, but it somehow or was used in electrical work and they were exposed to it and it caused selenosis. So garlic odor of the breath, GI disorder, so just GI distress, diarrhea, abdominal cramping, hair loss, nail sloughing. So nails would fall off, fatigue, and neurological damage. And since then, it is super rare to have a deficiency. Sometimes we'll see it in people with compromised intestinal function. So someone who I'll see it with people with like GI disorders, or if they've been on TPN, which is basically IV nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that their IV nutrition is fortified with selenium. Since that time, it has been found to be an antioxidant, which we're going to...
Sorry, question. Is it just about what you said with those on TPN and in compromised intestinal function? Is that because they're not able to absorb selenium?
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah. Okay. So selenium is part of...
Like in their gut, I mean.
Yeah. It helps with intestinal health. And so if their health is intestines are compromised, they're not going to be able to absorb it. So since that time, it has been found to be an antioxidant, which we'll talk more about what that means and why that's beneficial. And so it helps prevent inflammation in the body, helps with the immune system, and it's been shown to help with DNA repair. And it's also essential in making thyroid hormone. And
which is important for your metabolism.
Correct. Yeah, your thyroid is a little organ that sits in your throat. When you get physicals, they always touch your throat to check your thyroid to see if there's any lumps or anything.
A lot of issues can arise from not having a properly working thyroid.
Yeah.
I have a lot of patients that have thyroid issues.
Yep. Yeah, I do too. And so interestingly enough, Brazil nuts are the richest source, and one Brazil nut gives you your needs for the day. I thought that was super interesting.
Like one single Brazil nut is all you need?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good to know. That's easy. Yeah.
So I have heard recommendations for people with thyroid issues is just to try and consume more Brazil nuts.
Because of the selenium.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So selenium is in the soil, and so foods that are grown in or so for example, Brazil nuts, their selenium content is impacted by the soil that they grow in. So just a little tidbit there. But today we are talking about the Mediterranean diet. And before we start, I do want to explain the term diet. I think sometimes when we hear the term diet, we automatically think weight loss. Is that what you think when I say diet?
Yes.
Yeah. And I actually remember having this conversation when I was in college with a fellow. It was with a nursing student,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking about, I think, like a cancer diet, like someone who's on cancer and how their nutrition changes. And I remember her saying, I don't think a person with cancer should be on a diet. And that's when I realized from that day forward that I need to be careful about how I use the word diet. So when we say diet, we're just talking about general intake and someone's dietary pattern. So what they're eating most of the time. And in fact, throughout most of our podcasts, when I say diet, that's what I mean. Not a weight loss diet,
As a
but
dietary pattern.
yeah, like we all have a diet. My diet and what I eat, what your dietary intake is.
Aren't diets for weight loss also dietary patterns?
Yeah, right. I think that diet is the big umbrella term.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, diet could refer to something like that. But when we use it in our podcast, we are utilizing it as this umbrella term of just dietary intake.
Dang it, I was trying to catch you in a logical trap. Mediterranean dietary plan, not diet. Okay, that's cool. So what is the Mediterranean dietary plan?
It's a typical food pattern that is found in Greece and Italy, and in summary, in a nutshell, it's basically high intake of plant foods and specifically olive oil as the main source of fat. And when I say plant foods, I'm talking about whole grains, legumes, so beans, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. So really most of the bulk of this diet coming from plants. And then moderate intakes of dairy foods, fish, chicken, turkey, and moderate intakes of wine. And then lower amounts of added sugars and red meats. And I do want to comment on red meats. I think a common misconception that I hear all the time, I think there used to be a commercial that was for pork and calling it the other white meat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big confusion that I have with some of the people that I work with. So pork and beef are considered red meats. So pork is on there as well.
Not a white meat. Don't believe the hype. Speaking of hype, what is the hype around the Mediterranean diet? Because I've definitely heard of it, and I've heard people say like, "Oh, I live by the Mediterranean diet, and I've noticed a huge difference." I don't know. What's the hype with the Mediterranean diet?
So people often ask me, okay, what's the best diet to be on? There's so many different diets that are out there. I think it can be really overwhelming and people get really confused. And people will ask me, well, what's the best diet out there? And I would say the Mediterranean diet or this dietary pattern has the most evidence supporting the most or maybe like the best health outcomes. There's so much evidence supporting this. And it has been found to be helpful for cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, which, do you remember what metabolic syndrome is?
Nope. I certainly remember learning about it, but nope.
It's elevated blood sugars, elevated cholesterol, and then insulin resistance and like a certain waist circumference. And anyway, so metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, cancer, dementia or cognitive function, and then a lot of inflammatory conditions. So it's really known to be an anti-inflammatory diet. And inflammatory conditions include Hashimoto's, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, so different conditions like that.
So not that you recommend diets to anybody, but if you did, you would recommend the Mediterranean
This is
diet.
the one that I would recommend.
Wow.
Is this type of dietary pattern, right? Dietary pattern is eating
different than a weight loss diet. Yeah.
But yeah, just re-emphasizing that eating, it's not something that you don't have to eat all of this all of the time to receive these health benefits, but most of the time, a pattern is most of the time your
Mm.
pattern of eating is that type of way, and you can still achieve these health benefits.
That's a helpful distinction, especially for somebody who might take this to a
The
eating
extreme.
disorder level.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's just a pattern. You don't
Yeah.
have to follow it 100%.
And
It's general guidelines.
Yes.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever they says. Yeah.
oh,
I don't know if you've ever seen it. Never mind. Okay, so you talked about a bunch of the different benefits that it has, like how the specific diseases that it helps, and one of them you mentioned was cardiovascular health. How does it help our heart health?
Yeah, cardiovascular disease is probably what has been studied the longest with the Mediterranean diet. And it's interesting. So probably, I don't know, maybe like 20, 30 years ago, the recommendation was a low fat diet. And for heart disease, for cancer, they recommended to cut out all diets. And since doing a lot of this research, we discovered that it was the type of diet and that a lot of the fats that are encouraged or consumed in the Mediterranean diet were beneficial. And so it changed this recommendation to not a low fat diet, but emphasizing adding in more of these heart healthy fats that are found in the Mediterranean diet. And I thought a lot of these studies are super interesting. We won't go into a ton of detail because I know that can be kind of boring to listen to. But to give some brief facts, there's a really big cohort study, and these cohort studies is where they follow people over years and years and years, and then look at their dietary patterns, and then know, okay, how many people have a stroke, how many people have heart disease or get diabetes, and then they try and look for correlations or associations with their diet based off of what the outcome was. And so there's a really big study out there that's often quoted in the research. It was a nurses study, and there were 75,000 women, and which I also think is really cool because there's not a lot of studies of just women. But this was like a highly, all of them were nurses, and so potentially some bias there. But these nurses, they followed, and they found that people who ate more of this Mediterranean way had a 30% lower risk for developing some type of cardiovascular disease or issue and a 13% lower risk of stroke, which is pretty impressive. And then a couple other studies I found were really interesting. So I work with people who have already had a heart attack, and there's an increased risk that you can have another heart attack if you've already had one. And so this study looked at people who had already had a heart attack, and that they found that those who followed this dietary pattern had a decrease of 47% of having another heart attack again.
That's amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah, which I think is really awesome and hopeful that like you've had a really big wake up call with a heart attack, and that you can change and you can improve your health and get back
almost a half
50%
chance of never having a heart attack again.
So
that's amazing.
Kind of cool. And then this last study with heart health benefits, they took it was a randomized control trial. So they took groups of people and put them in different dietary patterns. So one group they put with an emphasis on extra virgin olive oil with the Mediterranean diet, another group with emphasizing nuts and the Mediterranean diet, and then just a control diet, which was just like general healthy eating. And it was planned for 6 years, but they ended up stopping it after about 4.5 years because there was such good evidence. They'll do that sometimes with these control trials. When there's so much evidence supporting it, it becomes unethical to make the control group continue.
Yeah, like
and so,
when they could be living all these health benefits.
Right. So they ended it early. And what this randomized control trial found was that, so both groups, didn't matter whether it was an emphasis on, I thought this was interesting that they chose this. I think they were looking at where the fat was coming from, whether it was from the nuts or from olive oil, but both groups had a reduction of about 30% for cardiovascular disease. So also pretty impressive.
It is amazing. Dang. So definitely really good for your heart. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of benefits. It'll improve your chances of not having a heart attack and dying for those that are worried about that, which should be, I guess,
Everyone.
all of us. Okay. So there's a bunch of other benefits. What are some of the blood sugars, or for those who have diabetic issues? What are some of the benefits for that?
Yeah. So, I mean, diabetes is an inflammatory condition as well. And people with diabetes, they also have a higher risk for heart disease. So some of these things go hand in hand. But one study, it was another like cohort study where they looked at 215 men and women with type 2 diabetes, and they followed them for over 8 years. And those that had more of this Mediterranean eating style, they found improved glycemic control. So like better A1Cs, lower blood sugars. Also, they were able to reduce the need for medication, so able to manage it with diet better. And so it helps with like your vasculature, and it helps to delay erectile dysfunction and sexual dysfunction in women. So also good to help improve sex life too.
Mm.
And then they also checked in this study CRP levels, which are inflammatory, like a blood value that you can check for inflammation, and those were reduced as well. So just, I mean, a lot of like vascular and anti-inflammatory help that rolls over into a lot of different chronic diseases, including diabetes.
That is cool. Very impressive. What about some of the? I'm just going to keep going down the list here. What are some of the cognitive benefits?
So they look specifically at people who with dementia, and there was a study that they tested people's cognitive function and then incidence of dementia. And dementia is also a vascular condition. So if your vasculature or like your blood flow or like access to healthy, rich blood flow to your brain starts to be impacted, it can lead to some of that damage in your brain. And so that's where the mechanism of action happens with the Mediterranean diet. And so this particular study they found that it helped to delay the onset of cognitive impairment and dementia. So lowered people's risk for developing dementia because of the anti-inflammatory impact.
Which is really good. Dementia
Yeah.
is really, obviously,
Sad.
really terrible.
Yeah.
For anybody that has experienced that in any way, I am so sorry. Go on the Mediterranean diet. That's all we can say. How does it help improve all-cause mortality as well? Mortality that's like, just
Yeah. Do you want to explain what mortality means? I think sometimes.
death.
Thank you. That was a very good definition.
All-cause mortality, meaning, I assume, just like statistic value of like mortality from any cause.
Right. So death caused by anything.
Including getting hit by a car. The Mediterranean diet will improve your chances of not getting hit by a car.
Exactly.
Yes.
Straight from the
Oh my gosh,
science.
it makes you invincible.
No. But
You can see the future.
okay.
Sorry.
So for serious though, they did a really interesting study. So a lot of these studies showed that it did improve mortality. So people were able to live longer or were more likely to live longer that were following this Mediterranean diet. And they looked at telomere length. With your telomeres are, is it DNA actually?
Yeah, it's the end. It's the end. If I remember right, telomeres are, sorry for anybody that's a actual specialist in this. It's the end cap of a DNA, and it gets shorter as you go on in life.
Right.
And it tells your DNA, what is it, when to stop replicating? I honestly don't remember. I just know that the shorter it gets, as it gets shorter, that basically means that you're getting older. And when you run out of telomere, then you die.
It's on the end of a chromosome.
It's on the end of a chromosome. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Sorry. Quick, little out of our scope for nurses and dietitians. We need a neurologist on this podcast. I guess not even a neurologist, maybe a geneticist. Anyways, telomeres, they get shorter and can be indicative of a person's length of life.
Yeah, the shorter they get, the closer you are to being dead, I
Correct.
guess.
Yeah. So they actually
Yeah.
looked at the length of telomeres, and for people who were following the Mediterranean diet, and they, again, another study full of women. This is so awesome. So 5,000 women, they looked at um the telomere length, and the people or the women that were following more of this Mediterranean diet had longer telomere length. So they think that that's part of the impact, is that that there, somehow is helping to increase the longevity of our chromosomal telomeres.
We may have unlocked the clue to immortality.
Yeah, the elixir of youth.
The straight Mediterranean diet in a
Yes.
pill. That's cool. That is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely got telomeres super wrong. Yep. I don't know.
I don't know. It's close.
We've been talking a lot about anti-inflammatory uses for the Mediterranean diet. And I think we all kind of know like what inflammation at least somewhat is. Like you get inflammation from getting a cold and your lungs or your throat gets inflamed or your lymphatic tissues get inflamed and all that sort of thing. You just feel sore and swollen. That's what it is. It's swollen tissue. So how is it anti-inflammatory? What does that even mean?
Well, and I think, so yes, inflammation can be sore and swollen tissue, but it also can be systemic and internal where you don't necessarily feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, diabetes and heart disease, you don't necessarily have sore and swollen tissue, but you have this chronic systemic inflammation. And so, I mean, what's happening in inflammation is you have a lot more of these free radicals, which are basically molecules in our system that can damage cells. And that's like cells in all of our systems. So damage nerve cells, damage vascular cells, damage intestinal cells. And so the key part, or the reason why this Mediterranean diet is so helpful, is because there's a lot of antioxidants in this diet. And so, these antioxidants are anti-inflammatory. And how antioxidants work, this is like diving into more of the chemistry and the biology, but they basically neutralize these free radicals and they stop them from damaging the different cells and the different tissues. And basically just help, they're protective. And then a lot of these foods as well, they're called prebiotics. They're foods that feed our good gut microbiome, so our good gut bacteria. And there's been the gut microbiome is super interesting. We'll talk more about it in later episodes. But they're finding a stronger association with our gut microbiome with a lot of these health conditions too, because of this idea of inflammation. Sometimes that inflammation can start in our gut, and it's called leaky gut. Have you heard that before?
I have, from you.
I work with a lot of GI patients, and leaky gut, again, is this damage to our intestinal lining. And normally our intestinal lining is, it's designed to be a barrier, an immune barrier. And so like pathogens and toxins can't get into our system. But if there's inflammation, there's openings that are widened or damaged. And so more of those harmful free radicals and other harmful compounds can get into our system and then cause more inflammation throughout the body. And so part of it is antioxidants on the free radicals throughout our system, but also healing our gut and improving our immune system, and preventing some of those pathogens and toxins from getting into our system. So, I mean, kind of a really interesting and totally other topic for another time. So good for our gut health and good for our general systemic health.
That is really cool. I am excited to talk about the microbiome because I think that's super fascinating, and I know not very much about it, but I think it's really interesting. It's super fun to learn about.
Well, we don't know a ton about it, but yeah, we're talking about
Yeah, it's
Mediterranean.
cool.
So, in our house, our little family of me and Spencer, we follow more or less the Mediterranean. And so yeah, I guess I should ask you,
So we're gonna
Spencer.
live forever.
Exactly. But what, yeah, I mean, Spencer, we've been together for what, 7 years?
Yeah. Yep. Something like that. I don't even remember. But living in the same house for 3 years.
Okay.
Something like that.
But what do you like about Mediterranean eating?
I like that it's going to make me eternal.
No.
But for real, what I like about it is that I definitely feel, not that I ate very well before, but I feel a lot, I don't know, lighter, which is like maybe that's like a bad term to use. I feel
I think it makes you feel like sometimes when I eat foods that are not Mediterranean, you do feel like
heavy.
heavier.
Yeah, it just makes you feel
Yeah.
like kind of bogged down. Yeah, like you like I don't know, like you
That's
want
a
to just
hard
like
way to describe it. Yeah, I
sit in
guess.
place and
Yeah.
not move, which
Yeah.
is sometimes fun, like Thanksgiving meals, I
Of
guess.
course. Yeah.
But
There's places and times for
yeah,
those types of meals for sure.
but no, what I like about the Mediterranean diet is that it's so fresh, and I feel like I am. It just makes I don't know. It just is really fresh, and I just really like the fresh food. Like it feels like I'm eating out of a garden, which I guess I kind of am. But so I like that. I like how fresh it feels. I
Yeah.
like the flavors a lot. I definitely
Yeah.
like the flavors.
Yeah.
They
Makes
have
our
some fun.
stomachs happy.
Yeah, and I feel good. I just feel good afterwards. Like when I said like sometimes I feel heavy or bogged down, like I imagine like when I'm eating a bunch of junk food on a car ride. That's like the
Just like
opposite
feel
of
a
the
little bit
Mediterranean
like
diet.
bloated and just like
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Mediterranean diet makes me feel good. Yup.
That's why we follow it.
'Cause it feels
Well,
good.
I mean, let's run. I think it, I don't, I hopefully this will be helpful, but let's run through some breakfast ideas of what would be considered a Mediterranean type breakfast.
Are you quizzing me?
Yeah,
Okay.
go.
A lot of nuts and berries in my yogurt.
Awesome. A yogurt parfait would be great.
Excellent.
And
'Cause
adding,
that's what I do a lot.
yeah, and I think like adding chia seeds and adding flax meal, like adding a lot of these really awesome fiber foods too to some of these yogurt parfaits. Good example.
Thank you.
What else?
For breakfast?
Yeah.
I'm afraid. Other breakfast options that are Mediterranean
Oatmeal
with nuts and berries.
with nuts and berries. Yeah. And then
I was just gonna say
people
like a general grain. With nuts
people
and
always
berries,
ask
but
like, can I add sugar? Like the recommendation is to I think the focus should be to what foods to add in. So if you normally like your oatmeal with sugar, please put sugar in it. And if it helps you to eat the oatmeal and it's a conduit of eating the oatmeal, add the sugar.
I put sugar in my oatmeal. It's gross without sugar.
I agree. So yes, add sugar, but also add your nuts and seeds. You could also do the chia seeds and flax, and add your fruit to it.
Yep. Sweet. I love that. Okay. My turn. What are lunch ideas?
Oh, I think we can do better on the breakfast ideas.
Oh, we have more breakfast ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
This week we're doing cottage cheese, and at least I am. Spencer doesn't like cottage cheese. Cottage cheese and pineapple or other fruit. I definitely think an omelet with a bunch of sautéed vegetables
That's
are
not the
really
one I was gonna
nice.
say. Just
Yeah.
like eggs with
Mm-hmm.
bunch of with a bunch of veggies on the side, and then like some
Yeah.
fruit as well.
Or a breakfast burrito. And if you're trying to add more legumes in, you could throw in some like black beans or something with your breakfast burrito. I also this is an English. I don't know how often they eat it, but I've had it before. An English breakfast of doing like baked beans with a piece of toast. That's an awesome way to get some more legumes in there. Toast and peanut butter. I have also had like a sweet quinoa dish where it's quinoa, so cooked quinoa, it's like a good substitute for rice. It's an awesome whole grain that's higher in protein. So cooked quinoa with some almonds, a little bit of honey, maybe some cinnamon. You could do breakfast smoothies that are packed full of fruits and vegetables, and then throw in some nuts to add some more of that anti-inflammatory, heart healthy fats. You could do avocado toast. I mean, these are all great and not limited to, but lots of different breakfast
Hmm.
ideas.
Also ask ChatGPT. I bet they would be
Oh yeah, that's
full
a
of
great
ideas.
yeah, that's a
I
great
love
example.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I ask them on meal ideas all the time because I struggle at thinking of meal ideas. To be honest, I'm pretty bad at it. Kylie's really good. She'll be like, "Oh, let's make this because we have this in the fridge," and I am not good at
Well,
that.
it is my career, so hopefully
Yeah,
I'm
valid.
somewhat.
But yeah, ChatGPT is my friend. Okay, so I guess I'll think of some lunch ideas because you just gave a bunch of breakfast ideas. Lunch ideas that are Mediterranean. Nope, you should give them some
Okay.
ideas.
I think like fast grab and go. I feel like people are
Mm,
always on the go, and Mediterranean can be not very convenient because it's a lot of like pre-prep and
mm.
it can be hard. So I mean easy grab and go things. I think about all of like the salad kits. I think salad kits are great, and then add more to them. Add more of the nuts and
So that you're
seeds.
not hungry 30 minutes later.
Yes, and add
Yeah.
more variety. I'd also add like protein and then maybe like some crackers or something.
Mm.
Wraps are super easy. You can like load those up with hummus or avocados or lots of veggies, some grilled chicken or some fish, tuna salad, egg salad. That's easy grab and go with some crackers and throw with a side of fruit. Um, I think at least in the States, I think like Mexican, if you did more bean-based Mexican food, that's a amazing legume getting getting more legumes in. Um you could do pasta salads and pack them full of vegetables, Greek salad where it's more of like the like tomatoes and cucumbers and feta cheese with like olives and olive oil.
Mm.
Um you could do like a gyro with falafel. I think that's an easy like grab and go thing if you're out and about too. I feel like lots of restaurants are having I see at least maybe the ones that we go to, I see a lot more falafel.
Mm. I
Um
do love me some falafel. Falafel's tasty.
yeah.
Hmm. I had a random question. So I know that you said olive oil was the main source of fat for the Mediterranean
Mhm.
diet. And I
Mhm.
know that you can, I guess, just eat a ton of olives and get olive oil, but that doesn't seem like super realistic. Do you just have to make a lot of sauces with olive oil, I guess? Is that the
Oh,
main
yeah, that's
method
a
of getting
good
olive oil?
question.
You just cook with
So, yeah, and I think like Mediterranean dishes like use a lot of it in their cooking in vinaigrettes or in I guess like dressing whatever they're eating. Um so what I recommend for people like use it in vinaigrettes or you can buy to add more to it, you or like more olive oil to our eating, you can get olive oil mayo, you can get olive oil butter, just to try and find ways to squeeze it in because it is such an awesome anti-inflammatory
Mm,
fat. But also, like that one study showed that there wasn't too much of a difference um,
between that and nuts.
in nuts. So yeah, nuts are like still a
Yeah.
fantastic way to get more of that heart healthy fat in.
Nuts can just be expensive. So I was just,
Peanuts,
yeah, that's true.
peanuts are cheap.
Eat a
Yeah.
lot of peanuts. Unless you have peanut allergies, then don't do that.
Then don't do that. Please don't do that.
All right,
We are
cool.
not liable for any peanut reactions, anaphylactic reactions.
What are some dinner ideas though? I mean the first thing I think of is Buddha bowls because that's super easy. You could just
Yeah. If you have not discovered, I've heard them called rice bowls, Buddha bowls, or protein bowls. I think that is one of the best methods for, or I guess, dinners for Mediterranean eating. They have a whole grain base and then usually like a leafy green and then a bunch of other vegetables and then a type of sauce. And there you can do it like southwestern with like spicy chipotle sauce.
or
We've
true
done
Greek style with
yeah, like
tzatziki
tzatziki
sauce. Yeah,
sauce.
I
Um,
love Buddha bowls.
we just made some with like a basil lime vinaigrette with some couscous and a whole bunch of veggies. That
Mm.
was really good.
They're easy. They're super easy.
And
You
they
can be
last.
lazy about it and they
Yeah.
last, or you can make them super fancy and
Yeah.
all kinds of flavors.
Yeah.
They're the best.
Yeah.
What are some other dinner ideas? I mean, obviously like fish. We don't eat a ton of fish, but
No, yeah.
fish is a good one,
Fish in
obviously.
particular, like salmon, like the fatty fish, salmon and tuna, or have higher omega-3s, that anti-inflammatory,
Salmon.
antioxidant fats.
Salmon's delicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of so again, Mexican dishes, Indian dishes do a lot of with lentils. Soups have a lot of lentils and beans that you can add. And I think maybe like, so yes, if you go and search for recipes, I actually wouldn't recommend utilizing the term Mediterranean because sometimes it can pull up foods like fennel or figs, and sometimes, at least in our state, those are foods that are hard to find. And so what I would recommend is looking for recipes and using search terms like plant-based, whole foods. I don't like this term, but it'll pull up what you need, clean eating. And that will help you get some of these recipes that are Mediterranean and very plant forward.
All right. So this is a lot of info. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's trying to start into this but feels really overwhelmed with all of the info and all the ingredients they need to use? Yeah. What?
Yeah, I think start small. Any dietary change, when you hear all this, I think sometimes people think or get really gung-ho and then want to totally revamp everything they're making
Let's go straight
and start
all
from
the way into
scratch
it.
and do totally different recipes. And I think that's fantastic, but you're very likely to burn out because it's everything that's new. So I would try and start in bite-sized pieces. So focus, and again, let's focus on what to add in as opposed to cut out, because we're trying to avoid that scarcity mindset, and that will help you get back into that balance. But maybe you focus on one aspect at a time. Maybe you start with like nuts and seeds. Where can you add in more nuts and seeds? Maybe you aim for a fruit or a vegetable with every meal. Maybe I'll have people that will try and do like 2 or 3 plant-based dinners a week. Or people who will focus on their snacks and starting with like a smaller snack and making their snacks more Mediterranean. Or I also have had people who will take their own, I think this is honestly the easiest way, is take your own recipes that you know and love, and then how can you add more plants to them? Could you add beans to it? Could you add nuts to it? Could you add more fruits or vegetables to whatever it is? We just tried. It was like a pasta dish that I threw in lentils that I thought actually was blended well. I thought the lentils were very mild flavored and like did pretty well in the dish.
They were good. Yeah.
Good.
I like them. Yeah, good.
You better say
Oh
that.
my gosh. No, they were good. Yep, I agree.
I was looking at him expectantly.
Oh my gosh.
Confirm.
No, they were tasty.
I've also had people who will focus on trying just one new recipe a week. If that's way overwhelming to try and do all of this, is just focus on one new recipe a week and slowly build up your go-to list of recipes that you and your family likes. And I don't think there's any rush to this, and any change is going to make an impact on your health in the long run.
Okay. I like that. I like all of those tips, especially adding things into the recipes you like, because that's very useful for those that are overwhelmed. But in conclusion, I think this can all be boiled down to eating more plants.
Amen. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. If you are listening, we imagine that you are probably on your own health journey. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this journey. We want to invite you to consider these 3 questions as a weekly personal check-in.
The first question is that maintaining a positive mindset is crucial for success. So, what are your victories and your wins from the past week?
Second question, what are your intentions or focus or goals for this next week? Reminder that the simpler and more realistic, the better.
And the last question is, what are you going to do to accomplish this goal? Be specific, and we invite you to write this down somewhere.
What specific things will you do to reach this goal of yours?
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you are listening to, we would invite you to subscribe. We'd also invite you to leave a review. If you do, you will be entered into our monthly drawing to win a box of meal deliveries. Take a screenshot of your review and send it to Complete Nutrition, complete with a K, completenutrition@gmail.com. You can also check us out online at www.complete-nutrition.com or on Instagram at complete_nutrition.